Thank you, Peter. I want to bring in Chris Wallace with us now. Chris, good morning. Been a profound week. What do you think of this so far?
Well, it's terrible. And this is the one thing that the administration, even in the mess of the evacuations and the way that this is all played out, was hoping against hope that they would be able to pull off the evacuations. And they've gotten 100,000 people, Americans and Afghan allies and foreign nationals, out of the country. They were hoping against hope they were going to be able to do this without the loss of any American lives. And of course, yesterday, that hope was dashed when 13 American troops were killed. So, you know, they've decided to continue on till August 31st, but not a moment before that. And then, of course, we also heard the president yesterday say, not necessarily before the 31st, that we are going to strike. We are not going to forget the ISIS-K. We are going to hunt them down and make them pay. But, as was said by George W. Bush, at a time and a place of our choosing.
Mm-hmm. Chris, some of the media headlines from today, I just thought that it was pretty interesting. I think we have one here. I believe that's the Washington Post. Biden struggles to address the most volatile crisis of his presidency. The New York Times says Biden faces a tragedy he pledged to avoid. And then Politico with this one here, the darkest day of Joe Biden's presidency. There's probably not a lot of disagreement about that, but where do you think the administration finds itself, and how will they try to talk about this weekend?
Well, it's interesting. We're hoping for a top administration official to come on the show. I mean, the main thing we're going to focus on Sunday is it'll be now, at that point, just 48 hours, 2 days before the deadline. And every hour that passes, this becomes more dangerous, not less, because the press of people to get to the airport becomes even greater. And the number of American troops who are inside the gates of the airport to process them is going to be fewer. And somehow you have to roll this up so that the last Americans, the last Afghans to be evacuated are on the last plane with the last American soldiers. So this is going to be as devilishly tricky and dangerous as it's been up till now. Those last 48 hours are going to be even worse. We also are going to have an exclusive interview with the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, who's been, like a lot of both Democrats and Republicans, very critical of the way Joe Biden has handled these last days of America's involvement, at least on the ground in Afghanistan.
Chris, let's take you back to yesterday, late afternoon. This is President Biden on the Trump-Taliban deal. This is part of what he said.
Imagine where we'd be if I had indicated on May the 1st, I was not going to renegotiate an evacuation date. We were going to stay there. I'd have only one alternative: pour thousands of more troops back into Afghanistan to fight a war that we had already won relative to why the reason we went in the first place.
Well, Leon Panetta's already said we're going to have to go back in regardless. I don't know if that's true, because for the past year and a half, it's been well marked. There have been no casualties, and maybe that was the Taliban holding back, perhaps. We can argue and debate that, certainly. But this was pretty much a counterterrorism operation that we had ongoing in Afghanistan, Chris.
Well, a lot of people, including Joe Biden, would say that's where we should have been a long time ago. Remember back in 2009, this is before Osama bin Laden was killed, when Joe Biden came in as the vice president to Barack Obama, there was a big discussion, went on for weeks, about what to do about Afghanistan, and the president ended up going with the military and surging tens of thousands of troops to Afghanistan. Then Vice President Biden was against that and in fact said to President Obama, you're being rolled by the Pentagon. He felt at the time it should be a counterterrorism effort, that we shouldn't be involved in nation building and, as important as it sounds, helping Afghan women and promoting democracy. He said, what is our real interest in Afghanistan? It's preventing it from becoming a safe haven to attack, and we can do that with a much, much smaller footprint. Now, unfortunately, we're not even going to have that. We're not going to have zero troops, at least officially, on the ground. And that raises the real question when they say, well, we have an over-the-horizon capability to take out ISIS-K or Al-Qaeda or the Taliban. I read somewhere today, someone was saying it's an over-the-horizon
right.
Capability. I mean, we are so diminished in our ability to deal with all the jihadists that are going to come into that part of the world, into Afghanistan, and that's going to raise real questions. And, you know, as bad as yesterday was, the president can come back from that, but if there is an attack from the homeland, on the U.S. homeland, from Afghanistan after the withdrawal of all of our troops, that could be curtains for the Biden presidency.
I guess what I heard from that soundbite is that he had option one or option two. One was to get all out, or two, there's going to have to be another surge. I just don't know if that's necessarily the case, but put that to the side. You have covered many presidents. What did you think of his standing yesterday? I thought off the teleprompter he made two great points, but when he goes to the Q&A, he just sounded soft and timid. And the sense I had is that everyone looked and sounded defeated, including the White House press corps, Peter Doocy notwithstanding. But that whole room, and perhaps it was appropriate for the moment, was just down. Well,
I mean, if you're not down on a day like yesterday when you have 13 American troops killed, something's wrong with you. You know, you ask about covering a lot of presidents. I thought back to one president, and one of the advantages of having been around a long time is you've seen a lot of things. Back in 1983, when I was covering the White House, Ronald Reagan committed Marines to Lebanon, to a civil war going on in Lebanon. And one day in October of 1983, an Islamic Jihad terrorist drove through a checkpoint and exploded a bomb on the Marine barracks and killed 241 Marines. And we didn't do it right away, but in fact, by February of '84, an election year, Reagan pulled all of the Marines out. And it was a terrible defeat. It was obviously first a terrible tragedy, but it was also a terrible political defeat for Reagan policy. But, you know, things go on and people judge. And this is a dark day for the Biden presidency, according to Jen Psaki, the worst day of his young presidency. But to sit there and say this is an irretrievable turning point in the Biden presidency, I just don't think history bears that out.
All right. Chris, we will watch on Sunday. You have Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, so we will watch that. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris.
You bet. Thanks, guys.